It had been over a month since the sun had disappeared, swallowed by the night, and with it had vanished any sense of peace in Barrow. Alaska darkness was absolute, barely interrupted by the flickering of streetlights and the hum of snowmobiles cutting through the stillness. Life went on as normal, well as normal possible, in a place where the night lasted more than 60 days. But last year the darkness brought with it something more, something worse. I'm the police chief of this town. I have been here 15 years. I have seen it all in a town like this. A bar fight or two. Domestic disputes. The occasional tourist lost in the tundra routine. For the most part, my officers, Carl and Dana and I, knew how to handle these kinds of situations. We knew our people. We knew the land. But nothing could have prepared us for what happened last December. It all started with a call from Han Damon, lived on the outskirts of town near the frozen coast, where the houses were more spread out, isolated by the endless snowfields. I still remember her call with her voice shaky and weak, as if she was trying not to cry. "Boss, I'm sorry to bother you, but something is wrong. It's Char. She's back home." Han's husband, Char, worked for an Alaskan native company doing maintenance at the oil facilities north of town. It wasn't unusual for him to get stuck there overnight during a storm. But this was different that day. There hadn't been a storm. He should have been home hours ago. Carl and I drove there, and the crunch of snow under the tires was the only sound we heard as we arrived at the Damon house. Han waited outside, wrapped in a thick parka, her breath fogging the cold air. The worry in her eyes was unmistakable. "Boss, I know something's wrong," she said with her voice cracking. "Always, she comes home." We tried to reassure her, but already she felt a in my stomach. Something wasn't right. We went to the oil facilities and found Charlie's truck, abandoned with the door open. The inside of the vehicle was covered by a thin layer, fresh snow. There was no sign of him, just frozen, dark blood scattered across the ice in a pattern I couldn't understand. Carl knelt down and ran a gloved hand through the red-tinged snow. What the hell, he muttered with his breath visible in the icy air. I crouched beside him, my heart pounding. The blood wasn't just a stain. It was a trail, and it led toward the shore. We followed the trail with flashlights, but the further we went, the less we wanted to follow the trail. It ended abruptly near the edge of the icy water, with no body in sight. Just more blood, a lot more. More the ice was cracked in several spots, with deep claw marks on the surface. But what kind of animal could be here? And why had no one heard anything? Han begged us to keep looking, but there was nothing more to find. Charlie had simply disappeared over the next week. More people began to disappear. A hunter, a woman walking her dog, and another of the parked oil workers further north. Each time the scene was the same signs of a violent struggle, but no bodies with the heavy snow and wind. There were no tracks or signs of what or who had taken them. We were no strangers to bears in this region, big dangerous ones, but this was different. The remains looked deliberate, almost intelligent. The way things were torn apart was unlike anything we had seen before, but I kept it to myself. I didn't want to alarm the townspeople even more. Carl, Dana, and I split up the town, checking on everyone we could, and warning them not to venture too far. The tension was stifling. The people could already be unpredictable during the long night, but this was pushing them over the edge, making them act even more paranoid. I will never forget the day I found Sam Walsh. Sam ran the only grocery store in Barrow that also functioned as a social center for the locals. He was a veteran, a man who had spent more winters here than anyone ever. I liked Sam, despite his habit of talking non-stop. Every time you came in to buy something as simple as a pack of cigarettes, it was Dana who first noticed that the store had been closed for 2 days. Sam always opened early. He was always the first to turn on the lights when night fell. But this time, the signs remained dark. I went with Carl in case Sam had slipped on the ice or gotten sick. The snow crunched under our boots. As we approached his main house, it was open. Forced open. The old hinges had been ripped out, and the door frame was splintered from the force of whatever broke it. A stale air hit us as we entered, as our flashlights swept the cluttered shelves. "Sam," I yelled. "Sam, you are here." And then we found Sam was in the back room, slumped against the wall, or what was left of him. His chest was torn, his ribs visible among a mass of blood and torn flesh. His eyes were wide open, fixed on the ceiling, frozen, in an expression of absolute terror. The walls around him were stained with blood that reached up to the ceiling. It was everywhere. There were traces of something, but between the immense amount of blood and the scene now frozen by the open door, he could not distinguish them clearly. He could not understand it. Carl gagged and stepped back, bringing his hand to his mouth. "God, what is this?" I could not answer. My hands were shaking. This was not an animal hunting to eat. This was something calculated, ruthless. It was violence for sport, something that made no sense. That night, I called a meeting at the police station. People were nervous, murmuring about what had happened to Sam, to Charlie, and the others. I could feel the fear in the as dense as the darkness that reigned outside. Dana stood beside me with her face pale. Carl stood by the door with his rifle slung over his shoulder, watching the crowd, as if he expected something to break in at any moment. "We still don't know what's going on," I began in a firm voice, despite the uneasiness that gnawed at me. "But there's something there outside. We need everyone to stay in their homes, lock their doors and not go out alone, and bear patrols," asked someone from the back of the room. "We haven't seen any bears near town," I replied, "but we're keeping watch. Donna, Carl, and I will make rounds." The meeting ended quickly. People were eager to retreat to the safety of their homes. Although we all knew that security would speed up, it was actually a week later when things reached their breaking point. The night was colder than usual, the kind of cold that freezes the saliva inside your mouth, if you dare open it. The sky was completely black, with no moon, just an endless, oppressive darkness. I was in my office going over map of the A, trying to find a pattern in the disappearances, when the power went out. The hum of the heater stopped plunging the station into a spooky silence. I grabbed the flashlight and went out into the hallway where Carl and Dana were already waiting for me. The power went out all over the town. Dana said with her breath, visible in the cold air of something moving near the north edge. "Okay, let's see," I said. Carl nodded with his jaw clenched. Han Damon called again, for Charlie said that if we don't find him, she'll go out and look for him herself. I cursed under my breath. "Okay, I'll stop by his house first. Take your rifles." We parted ways. I headed north, while Dinah and Carl walked through the town. The wind howled, dragging the snow along the empty streets in thick swirling waves. My flashlight flickered in the cold, casting long shadows as I approached the Damon house. When I arrived, the door was open, swaying gently in the wind. Inside the house was dark. save for the beam of my flashlight. The kitchen was empty with a half-eaten meal on the table, but the back door had been ripped off its hinges, the wood splintered and pockmarked with teeth. My stomach turned as I imagined what I would find next, and there it was in the snow. A trail of blood. I followed the trail, my breathing ragged in the cold night air. The wind seemed to carry whispers, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I could feel the weight of darkness. Blood led me to a small clearing by the coast, where the frozen sea met the land in craggy sheets of ice. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the snow, and then I saw her hand lay face down in the snow. Her body twisted unnaturally. Her clothes were in tatters and blood pooled around her, soaking the ground beside her. But she was still breathing, just as I ran to her, carefully turning her over. Her face was pale, her lips blue, and eyes bulging from shock. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a raspy, gurgling sound. Blood was pouring from a wound in her chest. A chunk of flesh had been torn from her neck. Help Jade with a weak hand, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. She is still here. I looked around, but saw nothing, just the vast, empty expanse of snow and ice. "What did this to you, Han?" I asked, trying to stay calm. What happened? But she didn't answer. Her eyes clouded over and her hand went limp. I cursed under my breath and looked around. There were no tracks or signs of what had attacked her, but I could feel it. There was something out there watching me. I radioed Dana and Carl in a low voice. "I found Han. She is dead. Whatever it did. This is close. We are on the way." Carl replied, but his voice sounded distant, hollow. "Don't move." I couldn't stay still. Not with that thing out there eliminating it. It had intensified, howling through the streets, like a wild animal. We wrapped Han's body in a tarp, the three of us working in a L silence. I noticed Carl was in shock. He had been the one to find Sam. Washage, and another corpse. Like this was starting to take its toll. "We have to stop this thing," said Dana, her voice barely audible over the wind, "whatever it is." Carl shook his head. "This doesn't make sense, boss." "I know it doesn't make sense," I replied. "Animals don't act like that." Dana looked nervous around her with one hand resting on the butt of her rifle. "So what the hell is going on?" I had no answer, but deep down, I felt a primal fear, something that went beyond the rational. There was something out there, something that was stalking us, and it wasn't going to stop the next day. The city was in panic. People had looted Sam's store and barricaded themselves in their houses, arming themselves with whatever they could find. The streets were deserted, except for some snowmobiles that ran from house to house. But no one knew exactly what they were running from. They just knew there was something out there, and they feared the next thing that would happen would be their own demise. I spent the morning going door to door with Carl and Dana, checking on neighbors, trying to keep calm, and assuring them we were doing everything we could. But fear had already taken root. People were not thinking clearly. They were acting on pure instinct and desperation in a house. Old Lady Kaufman opened the door with a shotgun in her hands, and her eyes wide with terror. "You won't let him kill me, will you, Sheriff?" she asked with shaking hands as she held the gun. I heard things scratching my walls at night. I put a hand on her shoulder, trying to reassure her. "We are doing everything we can. Mrs. Kaufman, stay inside. Lock the doors and don't go out alone. We will find out what is happening." Although as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed my own words that night. I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the events over and over, trying to make sense of whatever was going on. It was smart and strong. At first I thought it just hunted those who were trapped in the dark like wolves, but lately the victims didn't seem to be killed for food. It was something different, something that didn't fit. It was an animal, a human from the town. The next morning, I was sitting at my desk, looking out the window into the perpetual darkness. The radio crackled beside me, and Dana's voice drifted through the static. "Tom, I have movement near the old school building. I'm going to investigate it." My heart skipped a beat. "Wait for backup to arrive," I replied as I put on my coat. "See you there." But by the time I got to the school, it was too late. The building was old, abandoned. Since the new school was built on the other side of town, most avoided this place, claiming it was haunted or cursed. Kids used to challenge each other to get in. But none stayed long. There was something eerie about that place. I stood outside with the wind whipping my face and the snow stinging my skin. The front door was ajar, swinging in the wind. I walked in with my flashlight, casting long shadows in the empty hallways. "Dana," I called out, hearing my voice reverberate off the walls. I got no answer. I walked further into the building with my heart pounding. The floor creaked beneath my boots, and the cold felt like it was going through me to the bone. Something was wrong. I could feel it, and then I heard it. Music, a deep, low, guttural growl echoing somewhere in the hallway. Fear paralyzed me. For an instant, an instinctive fear like a mouse facing a predator. But I knew I had to keep going. It was my job. I raised my rifle and slowly walked toward the sound. My flashlight flickered, the light cutting through the darkness. And then I saw it for the first time. I saw it at first. I thought it was just a shadow, an effect of light. But the closer I got, the more obvious it became that it was something much worse. The creature was huge, with a white fur that blended with the snow. Inside its size was so imposing that for a moment I doubted my own eyes. Its eyes black, as the void were filled with an unnatural hunger. It was on all fours, and its claws were as long as my forearm. Blood stained the white fur around its jaws. I stood still, with my breathing ragged. I didn't know what to do or where to go. It was a polar bear, but not like any bear I had seen before. It was huge, bigger than any polar bear I had ever heard of. It looked like something out of a nightmare, a twisted and monstrous version of a real bear. The bear's eyes locked on mine, and for a moment we both stood still, staring at each other. Then it charged faster than I thought possible, lunging at me with a roar that made the walls shake the sun. The rifle nest echoed deafeningly in the enclosed space. But the bullet barely stopped it in an instant. It launched itself at me, knocking me to the ground, jaws snapping just inches from my face. I stumbled back and kicked at it as I tried to keep it away. However, it hit me with a huge claw that tore my coat as if it were paper and threw me to the ground as if I were a rag doll. My rifle fell away useless. So desperately I grabbed the holster of my gun as the bear prepared to attack again. This time I managed to get away, and I fired 2 shots at its side. The bear let out a deafening roar and staggered back, but it was not finished, not even close to being finished. I stumbled to my feet, with a cut on my arm, from which blood flowed. The bear began to circle me, and its black eyes stared into mine. I could see the intelligence in them, the way it analyzed me, devising a plan, waiting for the right moment to strike. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears as I slowly backed away from the creature. Its breath condensed into thick clouds of steam, and the stench of blood hung in the air, my hands slick with sweat. Gripped the gun tightly as I tried to fine-tune my aim. The bear seemed to sense my intentions, and I realized that even it knew it had the advantage in the few seconds I had to think. My mind stirred. That thing had killed my friends, the people of my town, and it wouldn't stop until they were all dead. It couldn't die, here not like this in a ruined hallway of an abandoned school. I fired again, aiming for its head. The bullet grazed its skull, and for a split second I thought it had worked. The creature staggered and let out a dull grunt as it shook its head. Disoriented, I didn't wait for it to recover. I turned and ran my boots, hitting the ground hard as I headed for the exit. The wind howled as I went through the doors, and the cold bit my skin like 1,000 needles behind me. I heard the bear recover and charge through the building, knocking down doors and walls with its huge body as it chased me. It was faster than I could have ever imagined, and I knew I didn't have much time. I didn't stop running until I reached the snowmobile. The engine sputtered just as the bear burst through the front of the school, a mass of fur and fury. I hit the gas and sped into the darkness as the bear's roar faded into the distance at the station. Carl and Dana were waiting for me, both pale and shocked. Their looks told me everything I needed to know. Dana had arrived at the old school first, and had lost the radio while fleeing, without being able to warn me before I arrived. "What the hell was that thing?" Dana asked, with a shaky voice. "It wasn't a normal bear." "I don't know," I answered, still panting. "But it's hunting us, and it's not going to stop that thing. Not only hunts for food, but kills for sport." Carl stood by the window looking out into the great night, a huge polar bear. "We have to warn the town, get everyone safe." "There's no safety," I said, with the weight of everything falling on me. "Not with that thing out there." The office phone rang on the other end of the line. A townsman spoke. Hastily, "Boss, something is tearing the streets of the town apart. It's oh God." The transmission was cut off with a scream, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone being torn to pieces. "We have to do something," said Carl, grabbing his rifle. "We can't just sit here." "I know," I answered, taking my own rifle and heading for the door. "But we can't fight like this. Not in the open. We have to lure it somewhere, catch it, and kill it." Where Dana asked her eyes wide with fear. I thought for a moment, my mind working quickly. Then I remembered the police station, thick walls, doors, steal a good arsenal. If we could lure the bear there, we might have a chance, a small one. But it was better than nothing. We bring it here, I said as the plan formed in my mind. We lock it up and kill it. The town was eerily quiet as we rode. The streets were deserted, save for the occasional flicker of movement in the shadows. Most people had barricaded themselves in their houses, but I knew that wouldn't stop the bear if it wanted to get in it. It was a force of nature, and it was furious. We advanced through the town, leaving behind bloodstains and the remains of previous attacks. With each step I felt something watching us, as if the darkness was alive and waiting for the right moment to attack. But there was no sign of the bear, at least not yet. When we reached the center of town, we stopped. The plan was simple. Make enough noise to lure the creature out, and then get it back to the station, easy in theory. But I had a feeling that things wouldn't go as well as they had. We were expecting car shot at air, and the rumble echoed through the empty streets for a moment. Nothing happened. Then in the distance I heard the unmistakable low and menacing growl. The bear was close. "Get ready," I said with my heart hammering in my chest. The growl intensified, coming closer. My hands shook as I raised the rifle, scanning the darkness for any movement, and then it emerged from the shadows like a ghost. Its huge white body blended with the snow, but its eyes gleamed in the gloom, fixed only on us. The bear let out a roar that made the ground shake beneath our feet and charged towards us at a terrifying speed. We turned and ran, driving it towards the station as fast as we could. I could hear its heavy footsteps behind us, feel the ground vibrate with every step. It was close. Too close. We arrived at the station. Just in time. Carl and Dana hurried to go in as I closed the door behind us. The bear collided with the steel, and the impact echoed throughout the building. He let out another roar, scratching at the door, trying to get in. "We have to hold it here," I said, with my voice tense with fear. "We can't let him pass." For hours, the bear circled the station, growling and scratching at the walls. From time to time, he hit the building with his huge body, making the foundations shake. We barricaded ourselves in the main office, the only room with reinforced walls, but not even that seemed like it would hold up for long. While Carl was sitting by the window with the rifle pointed at the door. Dana paced back and forth with shaking hands. I could feel the tension in the air, the fear that invaded us. We were all trapped with no way out and no clear plan to kill that thing. "We are running out of time," said Dana, her voice barely a whisper. "If we don't do something soon, I know." I answered with my mind racing. "But we can't face it head on. We have to find a way of catching him." The plan was risky, but it was all we had. We set up a makeshift barricade in the hallway leading to the main office, hoping to channel the bear into a narrow space where we could get a clean shot. I knew it wouldn't be enough to kill him, but maybe it could slow him down. We waited. The tension in the air was so thick, it seemed suffocating. Every minute felt like an hour, and the bear's growls made my skin crawl. Suddenly the door swung open, and the bear burst forth, a mass of fur and teeth. He was even bigger than I remembered, and his eyes shone with a wild intelligence. He moved at a terrifying speed, breaking through the barricade as if it were made of paper. I lifted the rifle and fired the shot. Hit him squarely in the chest, but he barely flinched. His huge figure absorbed the impact and kept advancing. Carl also fired, but the bullets only made the bear more furious. He launched himself at Carl, and his jaws closed around his arm with a sickening crunch. Carl screamed in pain as blood splattered the walls, and the bear shook him like he was a simple rag doll. Dana fired again and again, but it was too late. Carl was dead. The bear threw Carl's limp body to the side, like it was a disposable toy, and the sound of his bones breaking echoed in the narrow hallway. Dana let out a heart-rending scream. Her voice cracked with terror as she tried to reload the gun. Her hands shook so much that the bullets fell to the floor. I could see the panic in her eyes, the desperation as her mind searched for a way out that simply did not exist. The bear turned towards us. His eyes shone with an almost human malice, as if he knew we were trapped. The blood dripped from his jaws, leaving dark stains on the floor that mixed with the remains of Carl. His breath formed dense clouds in the air, and the smell of death permeated everything. "Dana, move!" I screamed, pulling her back. Just as the bear pounced, the bear's claws scraped the floor where Dana had been just seconds before. The screeching sound was like nails scratching a chalkboard. We stumbled back and took refuge in the office, slamming the door shut behind us. The bear roared, and its huge body crashed against the steel door. The frame groaned under the pressure, and I knew it wouldn't hold out for long. Dana curled up in a corner, her face bathed in tears and her breathing ragged. "No, we can't kill it," she muttered, clinging to her gun as if it were the last vestige of sanity she had left. "It's not just a bear we have to try," I replied. Although my words lacked conviction, there was no reasoning with that creature. It wasn't just a predator. It was something much worse, something wild and unstoppable, as if nature itself had declared war on us. The door began to bend under the force of the bear's attack, and I knew we only had a few seconds left before the AA, knocking over desks and filing cabinets in its advance. I fired again and again, but the beast was relentless. "Come on, run." I yelled at Dana, pushing her to the other end of the room. Dana hesitated only a moment before running towards the door. She fired a last shot at the bear's head, gaining a few vital seconds, and then I followed her. We ran through the back hallways of the police station with the sound of the bear's heavy footsteps echoing behind us. Each step made the floor tremble. My lungs burned from the cold air, and my legs weighed like lead. But I couldn't stop now. Not Dana and I laughed in the warehouse. The last refuge we had left in the station was a wide and windowless space, crammed with boxes of evidence shelves and rusty lockers. There was no other way out. We knew the bear would end up destroying him. "End this," how Dana screamed on the verge of hysteria. "We shot him. We've caught nothing worked. It's going to kill us." I didn't have a clear answer, but I knew there was something else I could try, something that could be our last chance to finish off the bear, once and for all, away from the room hidden behind a pile of dusty supplies. I found a rusty gas canister. It was a remnant of the old days when the station was heated by a backup generator before it was modernized. It was old, probably unstable, but at that moment it was our only hope. I grabbed the canister and dragged it with effort across the room. Donna's eyes widened as she watched me struggle with the heavy metal container. "Great idea, you're going to blow us all up," she said, her voice heavy with fear and disbelief. "Not if we do it right," I answered with a thread of confidence. "We can't kill it with bullets, but we can try to burn it alive from the other side of the door." The sound of heavy footsteps warned us that the bear was close. I raised a finger to Dana's lips, Dana begging for silence, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the creature wouldn't find us. That hope was quickly dashed as the bear roared again and faced the warehouse door, making the walls shake. It wouldn't be long before it would be in. "Come out the trap door," I said, pointing to a small opening in the corner of the room that led to the basement. "I'll keep it here. I'll lure it to the gas. When you're out, I'll blow this place up." Dana stared at me, paralyzed. For a moment before nodding with determination, she hurriedly opened the trap door. She climbed down the narrow opening and disappeared from my sight. Just as the warehouse door gave way with a crash, the bear appeared in the doorway, panting with his eyes fixed on mine. It was a fierce, hungry look, filled with hate. I took a step back, holding the shotgun in one hand and the gas canister in the other. "Come on, you damn bastard." You mutter. The bear charged at me, and I didn't hesitate. I threw the gas at him and raised the shotgun, aiming at the dumpster, just as the creature was almost upon me. I pulled the trigger. The explosion rocked the station, filling the air with fire and debris. With a deafening roar, the heat hit me like a wave, throwing me against the back wall. For a moment I couldn't breathe or see anything through the smoke and flames. My ears were ringing, and my vision was blurry. But then I saw it. The bear, or what was left of it, engulfed in flames. Its huge body thrashed wildly as it let out one last rending roar. The fire consumed it, searing its fur and flesh. The heat was suffocating. The smoke filled my lungs, but I couldn't look away. I stood still, stunned as the bear collapsed in a smoking heap. It was over. I staggered out. They helped me to my feet. "You did it," he whispered, his voice cracked out of emotion. "You killed it." I nodded slowly, but I felt no relief or triumph. All that had happened, all the lives lost, weighed on me like a burden. Carl, the townspeople. The price had been too high. We stayed there, looking at the blackened ruins of the station. The stench of burning flesh permeated the air, mixing with the freezing cold of dawn as the fire slowly died. I couldn't shake a feeling of unease. What if there were more creatures like that out there, hiding in the darkness one time we had survived? But next time we might not be so lucky. The long nights of Alaska had always been a constant MB Barrow, but after this they would never be the same. The sun rose weeks later as it always did, but for me, the shadows would never disappear completely. The polar night will return next month. This time I have to be prepared.